Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for being on. Really excited for our guest today, and that we would love engagement. So, if you are able and you can turn on your camera, would be amazing. If you can sometimes answer and participate, would also be amazing. We have my friend Anna McKissack on today, so welcome, Anna.
Hi.
Super excited to have you here. Anna has taught this class before, actually, probably throughout really the country, because I know you've taught it for other regions and in other places also, right?
Yep, I've taught it, I think, like 6 times this year. It's
Wow.
one of
Okay.
my favorite classes.
It is. I'm really excited that you're doing it for our folks too, because I think right now there is no more important time to really up your game with customer service. Not sure how everyone's feeling about their business right now, but most people that I'm talking to are definitely feeling a slowdown. And so as we kind of navigate a new shift in the market compared to what the last 3 years have been, your customer service is going to be the most, and customer experience is going to be the most important thing that you can continue for your referrals. So without further ado, we will record, by the way, because I know some people ask for the recording, have to hop on late and or early, but as much engagement that you guys can give Anna would be awesome. And I know you'll take tons of notes. So Anna, go for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Dana. I appreciate it. I told them right before you guys hopped on, I said a little prayer for engagement today because I'm a very animated teacher. So doing this over Zoom is new for me. So I'm excited for you guys. This is a fun way to define the difference between what is a service that you can give versus an experience that people can feel. And having something that it brings people to you and it automatically creates business, and it's something bigger than yourself. When it's just you as the experience, or it's just you as the service that you're giving, then it's only as big as you can be rather than allowing the business be as big as it can be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go through some of these slides. I would love if I could not PowerPoint you guys to death and if we could have conversations around this. So it'll be a lot more fun that way. The whole goal of all of this is generate leads now. That is the entire goal of this entire conversation. How can you generate leads today, now? And the question becomes, what is the most efficient and economical way for you to do that? So let me share my screen. Okay, can you guys see that? Yes? No? Maybe so? Yes? Okay. Perfect. Okay, so there is something called the curse of knowledge. And this is in any industry. It's something, what that means is something that you know that you think everybody else knows, or that it's just logical, that you just kind of figure it out. However, there is this curse of knowledge that you know something, and how do you communicate it to your team members? How do you make it be a something that everybody does, and how do you teach this to your people? So we're going to talk about how can you have a repeatable system that attracts agents to work with you on your team, if having a team is a goal for you, and how do you attract clients to you by giving them expectations. So I have a question for you guys. If you go to McDonald's, what are you going to get the same thing here in whatever city you're in versus if you go to Texas McDonald's? Are you going to get the same item? Same? Yep. Okay. So you're going to get the exact same item. Let me ask you this. Do you go to McDonald's because it is the most delicious hamburger, the most nutritious hamburger, and the best ingredients? No? Okay, I get some laughs out of that. It's true because you go because you know exactly what to expect. You know how much time it's going to take you. You know how big it's going to be, the size of the meal. You know what you're going to get. You don't have to make a decision. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that you know. So you don't go because it's the best or because it tastes the best or because it's the freshest or has the best ingredients. So that just proves to you guys that you don't have to have the absolute most expensive, best experience. You just have to have something that people know what to expect. If somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'm going to give you something that you expect and you have to make minimal decisions, how does that make you feel? Does it make you feel good? of like, oh, thank God, somebody's going to make a decision for me. I want somebody to make a decision because I have 12,000 decisions that I need to make. So that's what this experience looks like. So customer experience is, it's kind of like a pebble in a pond effect. It ripples out and it helps you or it can hurt you. So let's say you've got a pebble that goes into a pond and it ripples out. If you have a great experience that people give you, then people will tell people. This is how referrals are created. If you throw a pebble into a pond and it has ripples out, if you have a terrible experience, you're also telling people about that. The only way that you are not telling people about it is if it meets expectations. I mean, if you're meeting expectations and doing exactly what you said you were going to do, but there's no unexpecteds, you're not getting any referrals from that. And your business over the last 12 months tells you if you are meeting those expectations or if you are having those unexpecteds. So there's kind of these 5 S's. I don't know why they have them on top of each other on here, but it's always, I've tried to separate them, but for some reason that's the way they like the slide to look. So we're going to go with it. So you have 5 S's in your customer experience system. So this means it has to live in more than just your brain. It has to be something that is sustainable. So number 1 is set. Number 2 is serve. Number 3 is survey. 4 is surpass, and 5 is sustain. So we're going to walk through each one of these and how you can create something that's communicated and that's repeatable. So if you're applying this 5S model here, then you have this life cycle inside of a transaction and outside of the transaction. Remember, the experience doesn't begin and end during the transaction. It's outside of that also. So when you first see these lists of items on the buyer side and the seller side, most realtors think this is the experience. However, these are the topics, not the experience. So on the buyer side, when you have a needs analysis, what is the experience that they have when you set the appointment, when you're at the appointment with the follow-up of the appointment? The pre-qualification and pre-approval, how are they getting set up with the lender? What is that communication? How are you introducing them? What is the follow-up on that? What is their experience? Are they doing it online? Are they doing it in person that they have to bring every sheet of paper? Do they have the ability to do that if you have an older client and they don't know how to use the technology? Is your lender constantly following up because they're losing items? So you have to look at each individual item on here of what's the before, what's the during, and what's the after experience that they have. Now, the first thing that may come to mind in here is, holy moly, that looks like a lot of work. How am I supposed to do a before, a during, or after with each one of these points? Here's the thing. If it becomes something that is repeatable, that you have a system around it, you use leverage. So we'll talk about more leverage, and I'm not just talking about people leverage, because remember, there's 3 different types of leverage that you can use. But you use leverage of things that are extensions of you, whether it be technology, a system, or a person. Any one of those is okay. So if your value is just in your mind and what you are providing and your knowledge, you can't exactly leverage that. And leverage is the name of the game here, because you have to be able to go out on a vacation. You have to be able to go out and be there and be present for your family events or your personal events or whatever that looks like, and have something that's bigger than yourself. If you are reinventing the system every single time, trying to be as customizable as possible, then that takes time. You have to look at, where am I today and what do I have the time for today? Reevaluate it next year. If your business looks wildly bigger and next year and you have the ability to leverage more out, reevaluate, how can I be more customized? But start with something that's realistic today. Sometimes agents have a hard time moving forward of creating this life experience or this contract experience that they have for clients, because they feel like they don't have the money for it. They feel like they don't have the time for it. They feel like they don't have the business for it. Remember, 80% of action beats 100% of inaction every single day. So if you feel like you can get there 80% of the way, that is good enough. Don't let that hold you back and say, well, it's not the biggest and the best. You don't need that. Remember, McDonald's, people go to it all the time and it is not the best. Just keep coming back to that. It's probably the worst. that you could possibly go to. And yet people choose to go there all the time. Okay, so get to the next one. So if you want an extraordinary results in your life, you cannot be average. So if we're thinking about average, so let's think back to our 6 personal perspectives, which we talk about all the time. And one is going from entrepreneurial to purposeful. Entrepreneurial just means doing whatever comes natural. So if you want something extraordinary results in your life, you can't be average. Average is doing the entrepreneurial. What comes natural to you, and maybe what comes natural to everybody else. Are you blending in with the crowd, or do you stand out? And how do you stand out because of that? So here's where engagement comes in. I would love to hear from you guys. How exactly do you define customer service? I would love to know from you guys. There's not an exact answer from this unless you like Google it. But how would you define customer service if you were to guess? This can be a personal definition too.
I would say like when you leave somewhere, the experience that you have to me is kind of customer service.
Yeah, so the experience that you have.
Oh, Stephanie just said the same thing. The experience people have, the way they feel. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so customer service is providing a service in an efficient yet common way and solving issues reactively as they arise. This is service. I'll read that again. So providing a service in a efficient yet common way and solving issues reactively as they arrive. Okay, so what about client experience? How would you define client experience, which is different than customer service? What do you guys think? The wow things you do. Yep. Oh, I see Sarah said knowing the customer's expectations, then going above and beyond to supersede it. Personalized to meet their needs and wants, the relationships that they want, and customers felt during the service experience. Yep. So with customer experience, oh yeah, showing them that they're important. There's a lot of language around customer experience that is customization. And that may not necessarily be true, because when people hear customization, what's the word that comes out in the back of your head that you hear? Work. A lot of extra work. So if we're trying to shut that side of us down to say, what can we do? If you have the time, if you have the leverage, if you have the ability to be 100% customized, then yes, that is a great thing to have. But remember, we're focused on the 80% today, getting there 80% of the way to generate leads so that we can get to a place to where we can have the leverage that we need. And some of you guys may have that leverage already, which is awesome. But this customer experience, the definition is it is being purposeful and proactive about delivering an exceptional experience the customer feels, sees, hears, and remembers you for. I'm going to read that again. So it's being purposeful, which we talked about with E to P, and proactive, which many of you guys have used that term, about delivering an exceptional experience your customer feels, sees, hears, and remembers you for. So I want you to think about this. If you guys have ever been to Disney before, the moment you walk into Disney, there's music playing out of like rocks and everywhere. And everything that you see is completely in theme. And the characters aren't allowed to break their character. And people on average save 4 years to go to Disney because it has such high expectations. They know exactly what they're getting when they go there, and they feel something. Like if you've ever walked away after being at Disney for a couple of days, and then when you're in the airport leaving and you look around, you're kind of like, where did the music go? It's almost odd to not have this like magical, enchanting music playing everywhere I go now. You got used to that feeling and that experience. So if somebody waits on average of 4 years and saves up to work with somebody, let me ask you this. Do you have a wait list of people that are looking to work with you? that's when you know that you hit the pinnacle of your experience, that people will wait and they will save up in order to work with what you stand for in your team. Okay, so let's look at this. So there is some myths and some truths. So we're going to do a little Mythbusters action here on customer experience and exactly what it is. So customer experience, the myth is that it's defined by you. Quite truthfully, it's defined by your customers because you are one individual, but you're not serving yourself. You're serving your customers. So if you have your client base of the people that you work with, or your demographic of the people that you focus on serving, then who are those people and how do you serve them best? What are they looking for? What areas do you mainly sell? Because if you're looking in the heart of New York City versus you're looking in Nebraska, those are two totally different types of buyers. So if you, let's say you've got, I see Chrissy on here, you've got military and then you've got your non-military people. Well, military has a whole different set of needs versus non-military people. So you can have a military protocol versus a non-military protocol. So it's defined by what your customers need, and that demographic is what I'm going to call it. The second one is it starts and stops at the end of a transaction. Well, quite honestly, it starts and continues for a lifetime. The moment you stop serving your people is when you stop being top of mind for them. So we know we're always talking about, whether it be through our 36 touch program, or like a lot of people now are doing a 75 touch program, whatever that means to stay in front of those people, it means to continually be serving them. If you go on to command, and at the top of command, there's connect up there. And in the search bar, once you click on that, you put in MAC 2023. It stands for Mega Agent Camp 2023. Then there is all these one-pagers from everybody that was on stage. And one of the people talks about how to continually be serving people even after the transaction, and how that gets them a referable client experience. And they give scripts on different reasons why you're calling people. Okay, the next one, myth is meet the customer's needs. So you meet their needs and you connect at an emotional level and you exceed expectations. So remember, logic makes people think, emotion makes them act. You can be educating people in a way that doesn't make them feel something. So keep asking yourself, what makes you feel something? Because if you feel something different, then that's something that you're helping them want to make action. How do you have a feelings? Okay, so I'm going to give an example of this. I have two tiny humans. One is 4 and the other is 5. If I was house shopping, which we purchased a house when one of them was 1 and the other one was 3, and it was miserable going and looking at houses with them because they're all over the house, and the whole time I'm just yelling at them, don't touch anything. And if you have clients that have kids, you know that's probably a common thing. And my kids are little tornadoes. And there is a agent, I can't remember who I heard this from, but I heard it a couple of years ago, where they would create a scavenger hunt for kids. Now, this would probably be for a little bit older. Once they're maybe 3 years old or older, they could do this. And it would have things on the scavenger hunt like count how many windows are in the house, count how many doors are in the house, find the kitchen, and it was all things that they didn't have to touch anything in the house. So that way the parents don't feel like they have to be saying, don't touch anything at all. It was a safe scavenger hunt that kept them busy for at least 15 minutes, 10 to 15-ish minutes, depending on how fast they are. So that would be something that it relieves the stress of parents. It makes it fun for the kids. And if the kids are saying, I don't want to go house shopping, that does not make it fun for the parents. What if the kids were saying, I love going house shopping because I really want to do this scavenger hunt? So it makes it easier for people. Okay, one size fits all is a myth, and the truth is it's personalized and it touches emotions. So we keep talking about, if I just said earlier, it's not necessarily completely customized. You can have something that's personalized and not yet customized. So I think that Caroline Huo said this on stage at Mega Camp. you can be a keen observer of life. So they call it Be Cool, KOL, which stands for a keen observer of life. Are you noticing when they're showing up, what is something that they're constantly talking about? What is something that you saw on their key ring that they're really interested in? What is something that you saw them pull out of their purse, or something that you heard them say, I wish I had this, or something, just something that you notice about people. And if you are an observer of people, you will notice a lot to be able to bring things up, whether that be something as simple as commonalities that you can talk about with people to have a deeper level of connection, all the way to being able to provide them a gift. An example that they used for this keen observer of life was they were saying that one of their clients called them and said, hey, I need to cancel us going and looking at houses this weekend. I have to go do a funeral. My grandparent passed away. I can't remember who it was, but there was somebody in the family that passed away, and the realtor felt terrible. And they could have just let it go. However, instead they Amazon the person a book on handling grief. And the consumer called them the next day and said, I can't believe you did this. This is the nicest thing. It means so much to me. And that's something that's just special above and beyond. It doesn't mean you have to have something customized, like custom made. That takes a while to ship and you have to think way in advance. I mean, on Amazon, you can buy something, that book was $15 and showed up the next day. So it can be simple things. The next one is it addresses the customer's specific issues as they arise. So the truth is that you address the issues plus any issues the customer didn't know that they had. So what we know to be true, so we're going to come back to the curse of knowledge just for a second here. We know what the next step is after inspections. Yes? And we know what the next step is once you've received the inspection report. So let's talk about this inspection phase just in a vacuum by itself right here. So if we're talking about the inspection report, we know that it is normal to have a 40-page inspection report sent to you with the word defect or deficient written all over it in red. And we know to expect that, and we know it's okay. And we know that there are some items on there that are 25-cent repairs, and we know that there are some items on there that are $10,000 repairs. However, consumers on there do not know that it's normal to receive a 40-page report with defective written all over it in red and the cost differential of what some items cost. So we have to prepare our people. So when you communicate with them, communicate, this is where we've come from, this is where we are today, and this is what to expect moving forward in the future. So you could say, hey, we just had the inspection done. We should be receiving the inspection report today by 5 o'clock is normally when they send it. We'll review those together. What I need you to know about this is that it is completely normal to get anything between 40 and 50 pages. There's going to be deficient written all over it. We will walk through what are the most important items for us to ask to get fixed. And I'll give recommendations of some things on, hey, is this something that you need to walk away from? Or is this something that it's a really structurally sound house? Because there's the main items that we're looking for. You may even want to share what are the main items you're looking for. We're looking for HVAC, foundation, roof, and plumbing. And so that way, when they look at it, they're going to look at those items with the description next to it. What to expect next? We're going to have negotiations. We have until this date to do negotiations. We'll ask for a couple of items. We have to be reasonable. This is a give and take. And remember, this is something that we're in a relationship with these people. So we know what is coming next. And because we do it every day, then sometimes we forget to prepare our people for that, and it freaks them out and it doesn't give them a great experience. Okay, the next myth is that it doesn't happen organically. So you do have to be intentional about setting your standards and what those standards look like and what they mean to you. So those standards is, what is that repeatable system that you have? The next one is success is based on feelings alone. It's really measurable by repeat and referral business and your surveys that you get. So if you are not getting a ton of repeat and referral, you have a couple of questions to ask yourself. Number one, are you not asking for them? Number two, you may be asking, but you may not be staying top of mind regularly. And so people, after you ask, they kind of forget about you until the next time that you ask 6 months later, or maybe once a year. Or are you not giving an experience that is so memorable and makes them want to take action and just be a raving fan telling their people about it? Okay, so the data is clear. So staying in relationship with your database is the #1 way to get more business. And it is the most financially efficient for you to do it this way, because we want you to keep as much money in your pocket as you possibly can. So I want you to do this exercise. We're going to take about 3 minutes to do this together. And I want you to write down, what do you want your customers to tell about you? So this is your missing review that you want people to describe about you. Now, when you write this review, don't write something about, I want them to say that I was super knowledgeable, and something that they would write about any realtor out there. What do you want them to specifically write about you? Take about 2 minutes to do this. Okay, about 1 more minute. Okay, it looks to me like I have eyes looking at me, so I think you guys might be done with this. So can somebody share what they wrote on their missing review? Of what did you write that you wish people would say about you? I have people on here that I recognize, and I'm not afraid to call on you.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
I wrote this in the third person, Stephanie was
Perfect.
fantastic. She made our family feel so important. She went above and beyond at every step of the transactions. She thoroughly explained everything, and there was no doubt she had our best interest in mind. We will certainly recommend Stephanie to our friends and family.
That's awesome. What I love about that also is that you put a feeling in there, because remember, logic makes people think, emotion makes them act. That's great. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Let's do one more.
I can go. This is Carrie Klingel.
Hey, Carrie.
Hi. I just kind of wrote bullets. She was so proactive and knew what we needed before we even asked. We didn't have to worry about what steps were next. She communicated and reminded us, so it made it easy with our busy lives. We can go to her anytime with asking for recommendations for contractors, etc., and she is on it. She is thoughtful and always reaching out to us after closing.
Oh, I love that. That was beautiful. You know what I heard you saying in there is your clients can count on you. They can count on you to communicate. They can count on you to supply what they need. They can count on you for the next steps. And when people can count on you, that builds trust. And trust is really hard to build and really easy to lose. So by you being proactive on people, it's building extra trust. And even if you boil down experience down to, can they count on you? How do you know that? And have you built trust? That right there is something that you cannot trust. Think about going into businesses. Do you trust every business is going to get your order right? Do you trust that every business is going to have everything? Okay, for example, I ordered DoorDash Chipotle for lunch and they forgot the veggies in there. Do you trust Chipotle or do you trust DoorDash every single time to have your entire order correctly? No, it doesn't happen all the time. How is it that people always know what to expect and can trust what they're going to get from you? That was beautiful. Thank you, Carrie, for sharing that. So unfortunately, the truth is that customers are more apt to share a negative experience than to share a positive experience. So we're going to spend a very short amount of time on the negative side because that's no fun to talk about. But we need to know what all exactly that means. So the cost of a bad experience is 25% of people will just immediately switch providers. You can get negative shares on social media, or 19% will lose trust. This comes back to the trust word that we've already talked about. And a bad experience is really, truly just unmet expectations. It's not what they expected. Typically, that comes from poor communication. Poor communication from you, from your vendors, from them. And sometimes, I mean, just in actuality, when we're talking as realtors, then sometimes it's like pulling teeth trying to get people, your clients, to communicate with you. And so this is why you have to master the question asking game, and you have to listen to truly listen. You have to listen to what they're saying, how they're saying it. You have to listen to when is their pauses in their communication. Where do their eyes look when they're talking? And this is hard to do over the phone. Are they stuttering? Are they taking a big breath? What do you hear over the phone? And that will tell you what they're truly thinking in their communication. And you have to ask questions of, hey, I heard you stutter there. And it sounds like you may have a question about that. Where do you feel unclear about what that next step looks like? Or where do you feel unclear about how to communicate this? So being able to push on that and feel comfortable with it. So how can you reimagine your customer experience? So this is knowing your customer and yourself. Okay, so we're in a whole new age of customers. So from the early 1900s to the 1960s, we were in the manufacturing where it took days to get information. We then moved from the 1960s to the 1990s into the distribution era, and this is where it took minutes to get some information. From the 90s to the 2010s, then it took seconds to get some information. And now from the 2010s to now, we're an instant. People want the information now. And you as realtors feel this. I know you do, because people want to text you and for you to immediately text back, but you may be in a showing, or you may be in a closing, or you may be doing something else. I want you to think about this as an example. When you start to feel sick, do you first pick up the phone and call the doctor and set an appointment, or do you first Google your symptoms? We Google our symptoms before we even pick up the phone. We want to know, number one, do I need to take the time to schedule with my doctor? Number two, is this something that I can fix myself? Number three, when you call your doctor, do they say, come right on in? Or do they say, hey, I'll see you in 2 to 3 days? That is our first available appointment. Unless you're like dying, then they say, okay, you can come right now. But honestly, this is a terrible example, but I haven't even set up a primary care physician in the 5 years I've lived in Dayton, because I don't want to wait for a doctor. I just go to urgent care at the many urgent cares around us because I don't have to wait for an appointment there. And so we are in an age of where people want instant. They don't want to wait. And if we keep fighting, where I hear people say, those younger generations, they're just only used to Amazon where they get it tomorrow and they just want everything right now and they don't learn the sense of patience. Well, frankly, that's the age of the customers we're in right now. And it's not just one generation. All the other generations have gotten used to it also. Once you have something anywhere between a year to 18 months, you then, human natural thought process is to believe that you now deserve that. So think about this. If you're used to making $100,000 a year and you've made it for 18 months, and then this year you're making $50,000 in the year, you believe that you still deserve that $100,000 a year, which is true. And so if we have something where we have instant information and then we're trying to go back to days or weeks or months or minutes and they're wanting it right now, how is it that we can serve that information? This is by being proactive with people. They have to wait a lot less when you're being proactive with them. So what is the value of a customer? I want to walk through this information for you to know, okay, what is it worth for me to do this? Is it worth my time, my effort, my energy? So this is based, some numbers just based on some NAR average home prices and an average commission rate. And if somebody purchases their first home, let's say on average of $259,000, I know for many areas, especially Columbus, which I see a lot of people in here are from Columbus, then this is lower than average. And then they sell their first home and then they buy their second home. And you get commissions on both of those. And then they sell their second home and they buy their third home. And this is usually their retirement home, their forever home that they stay in. And after this, they may even move again to downsize. So the total value of having people continually coming back to you is about $67,000 per person. So what are people looking for? Now, what I want you to see on here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but there's what your customers need your help for and what customers look for in an agent. So this is their needs versus their wants. We're going to focus on the want side because everybody assumes that you are going to fulfill the need side. So that's what makes you standard for everybody else. They're not going to pick a realtor that they feel like is not going to help them find the right home. They're not going to pick a realtor that they feel like is not going to negotiate well. So that's something that they assume everyone is going to give them. On the buyer side, their wants. This is the things that makes you stand out. So I want you to look on the buy side. The very first thing is agent with honest and trustworthy. There's that word trust again. They want somebody that they can trust to bring them the right information, to take care of them, to help advocate for their financials. They want someone that they can trust that is going to set them up with the right inspector, that is going to set them up with the right vendors for whatever it is. Okay, agent experience is on there. Reputation of agent, that comes from what are people saying about you? When somebody says, hey, okay, so listen to these two different referrals and tell me which one you want to work with. The first referral is, hey, I heard you worked with Anna. What was your thoughts on working with Anna? And somebody says, yeah, I really liked her. She did a good job. She sold my house pretty quickly and for more money than I thought. So it was great. You should call her. Or the second one is somebody calls you and says, hey, I heard you worked with Anna. What did you think about working with her? Oh my gosh. She is on top of it. She always told us exactly what to expect next. She had all the referrals of everybody that we needed. She had enlisted. One had passion and conviction, and the other one had met expectations. Both are great referrals, but one had the passion behind it. And that is created through the life's unexpecteds. They weren't expecting you to do something, and yet you did. Now look at the seller side. Again, that reputation of agent is up at the top there, which is created by experience and honest and trustworthy. Both of those fall under the experience hat. So on the want side, the top three on the buy side, or 2 out of the 3 on the buy side, and then the top 2 out of the top 2 on the seller side are both tied to the customer experience. So whenever you close on a property, 90% of buyers say that they would use their agent again. However, only 12% do. Gary has talked about this multiple times when he talks about economics and at Mega Camp and Family Reunion. However, it's something for you to remember and look at how many clients have you served in your lifetime? Out of that, how many repeat and referrals have you received? What is your conversion ratio? So some things to stay relevant. So you have to know your market and your demographic, know your preferred or their preferred communication styles. So that means if let's say you're going with the communication front where you're talking with them to tell them about where you've come from, where you're at today, and where you're going. And you have them in a group text between spouses. And you are sending them all the information. You check in with them 2 to 3 days a week for them to know exactly what's happened, what's coming next, where you're at today, who you talk to, what you've done. Then let's say one spouse says, oh, this is awesome. The other spouse, let's say, says, they are blowing me up while I'm at work. And that is not the appropriate time for me to be talking about my house. You feel like I'm going above and beyond in my job. The question is, are you communicating with people in the way that they want to be communicated with? Do they prefer a phone call twice a week? Do they prefer text messages with updates as they happen? Do they prefer an email every Friday letting them know what's happened and what's going to happen? You must communicate with them in the way that they want to be communicated. And then the next one is knowing your value proposition. So here's the question I want you to ask in your value proposition. Can you articulate your value proposition? Does it stand out from other realtors? Can your team members articulate it if you have team members? So I want you to picture this moment. I want you to picture that you are at a listing table and you have another agent. So this is not a real life situation, but you have another agent who's going for the same listing sitting next to you, and you're sitting on the other side of the table. And the seller looks at the other agent and says, why should I choose you to sell my home? And the other agent says some variation of, I'm going to sell your house for the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassle. Usually that comes out looking like, my average list to sale price is 101%. I'm going to get you professional photography. I'm going to communicate with you regularly. I have a great marketing plan, a world-class cutting edge marketing plan. And then they look at you and they say, okay, agent, why should I choose you to sell my house? Is your answer going to be any different than from their answer? Or is it going to follow the same guideline of, I'm going to sell your house for the most amount of money, for the least amount of time, for the least amount of hassle? So one of the examples or an exercise that I would love for you to do, not now, but to do this sometime. What day is today? Today's Wednesday. I would say to do this sometime between now and Friday. I would suggest for you to have somebody ask you, why should I use you to sell my house? And then use the voice memos on your phone and record yourself saying the response as to why somebody should use you to sell their house. The reason why I don't want you to write it is because when you write it, you're going to change it as you write it. I want your actual natural response that you respond to this. I want you to then take your voice recording and write it down. So if you have like Otter AI, it'll do this automatically, or you can just hand write it down because it should take less than 5 to 10 minutes for you to do this exercise. I then want you to go and cross out everything else that every other realtor is saying. Is every other realtor saying that they have a world-class cutting-edge marketing experience? Is everybody else saying professional photography? They're going to communicate well. They're going to sell your house for the most amount of money. Okay, then what's left that makes you stand out? And that is where you're going to have a great answers when you can articulate it. But you have to be able to share that of, is it something that you can articulate? Because it's hard to articulate an experience that they have to trust you on the front end that they experience on the back end. So they won't be able to say until the very end of the transaction, hey, I don't know that this is true unless I go through the transaction with them. Or is it something that they can see proof of at the beginning that they know it makes it easier to make that leap of faith for them? So I always add that in there because I want you to have a competition piece that if you are going on listing appointments, competing with other agents, I want you to have a way that focuses on yourself and what you are going to do and what you can control, rather than having conversation about other realtors, because we stay in culture. And so that's conversations that we have. Okay, so chapter 2 is set the experience. So listening to your customers. So the truth is that people don't know how much, or people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, which is a Zig Ziglar quote. And this is where we talked about listening to listen, not listening to speak. When you're listening to listen, you know, if you've ever been in a conversation with somebody that they're really excited and they really want to tell you something, and you say something and you can see their mouth almost to start moving before you even finished. And you just know, nothing I say after this moment, they're even going to hear. So I might as well just stop here and let them say what they want to say. sometimes we as realtors, because we know what's coming out of their mouth, we may do that to people where they may say, okay, so next we have an inspection and I'm really worried about that. And you may jump in and say, oh, yes, it's totally normal to have a 40 to 50 page inspection report, blah, 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 blah. And you give the explanation. Let them finish their sentence. And then ask a follow-up question, usually at least one follow-up question. Wait until they're done. Have patience with them. Remember, their brain is working through this stuff that they don't do this every day. They do this on average every 5 to 7 years. Even your investors who may do this monthly, you're still doing this 4 to 5 times monthly, and they're doing it 1 time monthly. So let their brain work through some pieces and truly listen to them. Like we talked about earlier, we listen to body language. We listen to what do we hear over the phone. Now there is a system called the Promise, and I say the wrong guy's name every single time because I'm terrible at names. But it was a guy that was in a very small town. I feel like he was in North Dakota, if I remember correctly. And he did 608 units a year, and 400 and something of them, I can't remember the exact number, came from referrals and repeat customers from one single script that he gave. So it was called the Promise. And what he would say is he would say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, can I make you a promise? And they would say, sure. And he would tell them, so my promise to you is that by the end of this transaction, you're going to look back and you're going to say, there is no possible way that this experience could have been any better. I can't promise you that it's going to go perfectly smoothly, but I am going to promise you that you're going to believe that nobody else could have made it smoother for you and a better experience for you. I'm going to know that I've achieved this if by the time we get to the closing table, you have sent me somebody else that you are dying to have the same experience that you had. If we get to the closing table and you haven't sent me somebody else, I'm going to know that I've failed you in some way. And I'd really like to have a conversation with you about where I failed you. Is this promise okay with you? And that has gotten him 400 repeat and referrals over the years. Now, I would assume if he's making that kind of a promise to his customers, that he's not just throwing it out there and hoping that something sticks and hoping that his great marketing and his great communication is going to do it. My guess is that he has some sort of repeatable system that gives people an experience that makes them feel something. So we're going to do another exercise really quick. This is 2 different exercises. We're going to start with the left side. And I want you to go through these prompts. We're going to spend about 3 minutes doing this. The first one is I exceed expectations by. So I want you to fill this out. It can be third person or not. Take about 3 minutes to go through this. I exceed expectations by, and I'll kind of guide you along to the other ones also. Okay, the next one is I deliver an exceptional experience for my customers by. Okay, the next one is my personal strengths are. What are you great at? Next is my team strengths are. If you don't have a team yet, your team is your vendors. Your team is the people that you connect with, your extension of yourself. Okay, so my goal is for you to be able to use this as a prompt to be able to write what is your value proposition. So we're not going to do this right side together because that comes back to you recording yourself and writing it out and then editing it. But I want this to be used as a prompt of what are you great at? What is your team great at? Where do you excel? What can you play off of? Because what's not really fun is if you're great person to person and you try to create your experience over technology. If that's not your strength, you're never going to do it. You'd rather play inside of your strength zone. So remember, we're trying to make this business work for us, not make us work for the business. So if we're trying to make the business work for us, that means we play in our strength zones. What are we good at? I know that Anna gave examples for this, and so it's easy to use those examples, but that's not my strength zone. My strength zone is over here. So I need to start asking other agents, hey, what are you doing until I find something that plays inside of my strength zone? Or just spend some time thinking about it. So the next step is to serve. How are we serving people? So when your words and your actions overlap is when you have integrity. If you've ever met somebody that their words are always over here and their actions may not follow through, you feel like they have low integrity, which means low trust. That trust word again. So the truth is that your integrity is challenged every time you fail to deliver on what you say that you will do. You can have all of the intentions in the world. What is their experience and their perception? So this is something that's important for you to think about. So let's talk about standards, because the biggest time that you have people that will fail at what they say they're going to do, it's because there weren't standards in place that everybody was on the same page for. Standards can kind of be a scary word. So when you uphold standards, there will be turnover. And this is hard for people because they say, if you have a team and they say, well, I have somebody who's not upholding the standards of the team. If you enforce those, there will be turnover. But let me ask you this. Would you rather have turnover of your database to have stability in your team of somebody that's not hitting the standards and you lose people in your database? Or would you rather have stability in your database with repeat and referral and turnover in your team until you find somebody that can fulfill those standards? So this is the same thing for your vendors. So again, if you don't have a team in your business, you have a team worth of vendors. But I want you to be okay with the word turnover because that means that you are upholding the standards that you expect for your people. So the myth is that my clients will only work with me and only I can deliver the quality of service that they're looking for. That's only true if you don't have a system and your system lives inside of your brain. So if you have an admin that shows up day one and they say, okay, so what's your system? And you're like, I don't know where to start from here. I don't know what my first step is from here. That was a reality for me. So I'm going to teach you the easiest method that you can possibly do. What I did is when I knew that I was going to hire an admin, I found a blank piece of paper on my desk and I turned it over and I started writing every step of what I did. It wasn't pretty. It was the back of an envelope, quite honestly. It was handwritten. It was scratched out. I had stuff written all across the edges when I ran out of room on the front, but I knew that if I could keep track of this one sheet of paper, then when my admin showed up, I had something. A secondary option is you can have your admin show up and you can say, shadow me. Now that means you're starting your 30-day process from the moment they walk in, rather than you starting the process beforehand. Even if you're not adding an admin and this is something that you're intending to do on your own, if you don't know what your experience is, just start writing out, what are you doing? And then when you're in the middle of doing it, write out, I wish I had done this. It would be better next time if I did this. If I did this, it would stand out. So the truth is that your clients aren't necessarily loyal to you as a human being. They're loyal to the standards that you represent. And this right here is how teams work. Because if you, as the rainmaker, have team members on your team upholding the same standards and level of experience and service to your people, they know that they're going to follow what you represent also. Again, this comes back to, why is it that McDonald's is the exact same here where you're currently at versus the same in Texas? So we talked about using leverage technology. So I have on here our common language, which is Command and the KW Consumer app. So some examples of this, I really don't care what you use or how you use it. I'm just using common language for everybody. You can set your daily tasks. You can have client updates turned on. You can have your opportunity tasks that when you move it to the next opportunity, because you're doing that most likely to get paid anyways, then does it give you a notification of, this is the task that's next for you. Don't forget to order this. Don't forget to do this at this point, which I know Command has the functionality to do these things. On the KW Consumer app, are you setting them up on personalized neighborhood nurtures? I mean, if you tell me that people don't want to do that, I beg to differ, and we can just look at Zillow's search results and how many hits they have on their webpage per month. There is lots and lots and lots of people going to Zillow to be made feel like they're smarter by understanding what is the average value of their home, what's going on with the biggest investment of their life. Because especially with the market shifting right now, they want to know, is my house decreasing in value or increasing in value? Something just as simple as this communicates with them regularly and allows it to be customized to you, because this is the one thing that I will push on. When you have a listing, please, please, please don't post the Zillow listing or the realtor.com listing that when they click on that, it says, ask an agent, and it's some other agent that pays for leads. You have the ability to have something that sends them to you. Please use, if just for nothing else, when you post your listings, just use the consumer app for that, and then use whatever you want for anything else. But don't send people to somebody else and another agent paying for leads. But you can use technology to leverage your time, leverage your efforts. Amazon is a form of leverage. Or having reminders set up in your Google Calendar is a set of leverage. If you have a transaction coordinator, they can set calendar invites and reminders for you. So you can leverage people. This is the next set of leverage, which is your team, if you have team members on your team, or your vendors. I love this quote from Peter Chabris. He's actually in our region. Peter says that everyone needs to be invested in our standards. The vendor, the broker, the title company, they all have to understand what they're trying to achieve. We ask our vendors to sign our standards agreement because our customer experience is not only within our walls, but extended through our vendors. I would be curious to know from any one of you guys, does anybody else have your vendors sign your standards agreement? Do they know what those standards are? This doesn't mean your standards agreement has to be something way out in left field on, you have to respond to them within 1 minute, or you have to do this within 1 day, when the reasonable amount of time it takes for 3 days for them to do this. But it can be things that are within the normal bounds that you want to make sure that you guys are all on the same page for. This is so important. So the next one is survey. When you survey your people, then this is following up on them. You can have a perception of how it's going. What is their perception on how it's going? So you can check in frequently, not just at the end. When I was an agent, I thought checking in with somebody and doing a survey was at the closing table, after they finish doing the closing and the title officer goes out and either makes copies of all the sheets or they put it on a thumb drive, I would usually take that time to have them fill out what's their birthday, what's their favorites, what's their favorite restaurant, when's their kid's birthday, what's their pet's name. Oh, and here's the survey of how I did. That is not the time to do it. You can check in and ask during certain big checkpoints and see, how are we doing? How are you guys doing? Are you happy with the level of communication that you've received? And that way you can incrementally fix things along the way, and you don't wait until it's too late to have to do the I'm sorry tour. Number 2, ask for feedback with surveys, reviews, and testimonials. Number 3, track your customer experience score. And number 4 is make improvements. So when you're asking for feedback with surveys and reviews and testimonials, then you can do this through multiple different systems. So let's talk about this more on the next slide. So 86% of customers read online reviews for a local business. If somebody tells you, hey, you need to go here to get, let's say you're looking for somebody to do your hair, the first thing that you're going to do most likely is Google them. What are their reviews like? And then you call your friend and say, they have an average of 1.5 stars. This sounds like a terrible person. And they say, no, they did great for me that one time that I went. And are you likely going to look at all of the reviews that this person has averaging 1.5 stars? Or are you going to take the word of the person that went there one time and it worked really well for them? So this is part of the action has to match the words, and your reviews are a big part of that. 68% of consumers were more likely to buy from a local business with positive online reviews. So they love local, they love positive online reviews. 89% of customer testimonials are considered the most effective content for a marketing tactic because it goes online and you can share the testimonial. So there's 2 different pieces of marketing that can work here. 90% of customers say buying decisions are greatly influenced by positive reviews. So when you're looking in real estate, the question we frequently get asked is, where should I get my reviews? Google is number 1, the most important one, is the common consensus. Facebook is number 2 most important, typically because those are the 2 that come up the most. Zillow is number 3. However, Zillow has discussed, and they've started implementing this in certain areas, where you have to pay for a premier account. Otherwise, they're just going to take the entire account away. So you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket in Zillow when they have the ability to revoke your right to even have a profile at all. Yelp is another important one. At minimum, I would get 10 reviews on Yelp just to have a presence there in general. Realtor.com is another one. And what I've heard some people doing, I've seen a couple of agents since then do this, but Lance Loken was the first person, the Loken Group in Houston, Texas. So they sell about anywhere between 2,000 and 2,400 units a year. They do a lot of business. And their entire team's 135, or their GPS, was based on the amount of 5-star reviews that they got. Now, if their goal was to get, let's say, 1,000 5-star reviews, they know that they have to sell whatever the conversion ratio is. If we do 5 transactions, and for every 5 transactions, we get 2 people or 1 person to fill out a review, then they know that they have to get 5 times that amount. Okay, so if they want 5-star reviews, on average, the reviews come in at 4.9 stars. So they have to get X amount of people in order to get 5-star reviews. So your 135 or your GPS doesn't necessarily just have to be about what is your GCI or your amount of units sold. You can make it something like this to where you have to sell real estate in order to get your 5-star reviews. You can incentivize people on your team. Let's say you have an administrative team with you. You can give them a $100 bonus for every time they get a 5-star review from clients. So you can get everybody on the same page. Okay, the next one is surpass. So this is where you elevate your service. What I want you to see on here is you see Ritz-Carlton and Nordstrom. They are known for their customer experience that they give people. You know exactly what to expect. You know the level of service that you're going to receive there. When you walk out of a, I don't know, some just generic department store, it may not be odd to you if nobody talks to you and if they just kind of brush you off when they're there and they're not overly welcoming. However, if you leave the Ritz-Carlton or if you leave Nordstrom and people weren't going out of their way, overly nice, making eye contact with you, you're going to find that weird because you know exactly what to expect with them. So it really comes from even little things with them. So Ritz-Carlton wrote a book. They were actually the ones that started the phrase "my pleasure," and then Chick-fil-A took over and started doing that. And a couple of, let's see, I'm trying to think about some other. An example of this is I have an agent in my office that used to work for the Ritz-Carlton, and her job was she had $2,000 a day to spend on going above and beyond for people to create the life's unexpected, to make it worth it to stay there versus somewhere else. So for example, my youngest daughter, my 4-year-old, is super into Spider-Man right now, and particularly Ghost Spider. And she has, and Princess Peach. She's like really into these three and they all play with each other. So she walks around pretty much her entire life in a Spider-Man tutu dress holding Princess Peach. And if we walked in and checked in the Ritz-Carlton, their job is then to have like a Spider-Man something on the TV screen, or for them to have a Spider-Man something in the room when we come back from dinner or something like that. And it's something that they noticed, and something as little tiny as like having a Spider-Man up on the TV screen. My 4-year-old would run and be like, Mommy, there's Spider-Man, and think it's the coolest thing ever. And that makes me feel good that you did something different and something unexpected for me. So remember this, these don't have to be the big things, but if you just focus on them, just be a keen observer of life, of what is it that's showing up for people, then you will stand out from others. Okay, so this is the last little bit here. We may actually finish a little early today, which is exciting. So I want to give you a couple of examples on here. So I think pretty much everybody on here has a crumble cookie somewhere around them. When I was in production in Texas, we had these things called Tiff Treats. I don't know if it's all over the place or just in Texas or where it is, but their whole thing was delivering warm cookies to wherever they were ordered. So you can bring crumble cookies to people once they're under contract, because people can expect things at the closing table because that's the big celebration. However, I've also seen going under contract gifts for people to tell them congratulations. There was an agent, I feel like it was at Family Reunion, that talked about this. And they said that they had crumble cookies delivered to their buyer's house once they went under contract. Yes, there is a risk to this, that you just paid $40 or $36 or whatever it is to have crumble cookies delivered. Yes, they may fall out of contract, but don't let the one reason for the reason that you can't stop you from doing something that creates the life unexpected. You know to be true that moving day is hectic. It's hard. You're just trying to survive through the day of pack up your whole entire life into a truck and then unpack your whole entire life. And they typically forget a list of things. They forget toilet paper when they get to the new house. They forget paper towels to clean things off. They forget lunch. They forget silverware. They forget all of this kind of stuff. So what if you ordered pizza for a moving day for them? All you have to ask is, hey, what day are you expected to move? This could be something that you ask 1 week before closing of what day do you have the mover set up. Now, once you walk through the house after the transaction, inevitably the call comes about 1 week after the closing, depending on the type of the buyer that you have. It's anywhere from like 3 days to 1 week after, where inevitably they say, I didn't see this during the walkthrough. I didn't know this was in the house. I must have missed this. Who do you have for a recommendation for paint, for roof, for fixing plumbing, for fixing this? So usually about 1 week after closing or a couple of days after move-in, ideally, let's say they move in over the weekend. So on Monday, a day or two after, then you can provide an approved vendor book with negotiated discounts. What if you had a booklet that you could provide to people? I actually have an example of this, and I wish I pulled it out. I'll have to, if I remember where it is, I'll pull it out for you guys. But if you had a booklet of vendors that all they had to do is say, hey, tell them that you work with Anna McKissack and you'll get a 20% discount. An example of this is when Press and I, my husband and I, first moved to Ohio. We moved all of our stuff from Texas. It was the movers forgot to tell us that they didn't have a truck coming for 2 weeks. So for 10 days, we had a 3-month-old and absolutely nothing in our house. So when our stuff came, we were so excited to do laundry. So they set everything up. I hit start on the washing machine. And about an hour later, I hear like pouring coming out of the ceiling. And something had happened with the washing machine during the move. And water was pouring out of the ceiling. And we had to like rip up the ceilings in our brand new house and rip up the floors, and it went all over my laptop, of course. And I was a new team leader of a launching market center at that point, and so I didn't know anybody in Ohio. So I called a couple of my agents, or I sent out a couple of texts and said, hey, who do you guys have that can help me with flooring, or who do you have that can help me with this stuff? And one of my agents texted me back and said, hey, if you tell this person that the Probe sent you, then you get a 20% discount. Guess who I now call every single time I need a recommendation for something? Them, because they have a vendor booklet that provides discounts. So that it will keep people coming back to you if you can provide something like this. 1 year after their anniversary of living in a house, you can schedule a reservation. Usually what people do for this is they'll have like 5 different restaurants, and you could call them and say, hey, your 1 year anniversary is coming up next month. I have 5 different restaurants that I've scheduled you a reservation for. Would you like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, or 7 o'clock? And which of these 5 restaurants would you like? And then they can go on their reservation in their appointment time, and you can have an agreement with the restaurant that a free bottle of wine on you is delivered to their table. So that's something that you can use. You can provide events, micro and macro events for top referrers. So macro event is for large groups of people. A micro event is for your top A+ referrals. So if you have a group of people that gives you a large amount of referrals and you really want to love on them, then you could take that small group of 5 to 10 people out wine tasting, bourbon tasting, to get their nails done, I've seen all the way down to get facials. I mean, anything that you can do to take them to do something special. There is an entire 1-pager from Mega Camp, this time from Flor McNally, who's in Cincinnati. She's in our region, and she does welcome home parties or housewarming parties for people. Use that 1-pager as an example for a micro event, where now you get to meet all the friends and the family members of the people that you just helped go through that buying experience, to where now you have relationships with those people. This is a typical one. A lot of realtors do this. Call during tax season, provide them their closing disclosure. You can pick up, I can't remember who said this, but this was also at Mega Camp. You can pick up their favorite meal for their last night in their house for the night before moving. Remember, everything is packed up. So what is it that you can have delivered to their house? Let's say you spend $40 or $50 the night before. You are probably spending that on a closing gift anyway. So instead of giving them a gift card to Home Depot at the closing table, what if you had their favorite dinner delivered to their house the night before closing, or the night before moving when everything was all packed up? That makes their life easier. Throw a welcome party and host it at their house. We talked about that one. have a supply of things your clients can use. So this, there was an agent that did like 200 million in Texas, and he had a storage facility because he had built up so much stuff. He had a margarita machine, a bounce house, a blow up slide, all these things that you would rent from party rental places, and his clients got to borrow it. So his lead generation calls looked like this. Hey, X, Y, and Z. I'm just calling to remind you that we have a margarita machine, a bounce house, and a blow up slide that you get to use for free because you used this as clients. Is there any weekend that you would like to reserve those? Or you just have to call us to reserve those, and you can come pick them up from our office. By the way, is there anybody else that you would like to be able to have that same services where they can borrow these as well, which you get that benefit from working with us. I have an agent who heard this in the Dayton area, and honestly, she just went and bought a bounce house, put it in her basement, and when her clients called to reserve the bounce house, then she would put it on her front porch. They would come pick it up, they would use it, they would bring it back to her front porch, and she just had to put it in her basement. This does not have to be super difficult, and it's first come, first serve. So that means if somebody else already reserved it, then at least they're calling you to where you could say, hey, if you want to do it the next weekend, that's totally fine. However, this weekend is already reserved. Let's see, experiences for open houses. Are you, what type of prep are you doing for putting the home on the market? And what type of prep are you doing for having that open house? There's a whole one pager on command about how to do open houses at a really high level. I think it's called 7th Level Open Houses from Fritz Pollard is the name of that one pager. What do people expect for price reductions? This is not necessarily a fun conversation, but it's definitely not fun when they didn't know it was coming and you need to go sit at the table with them and tell them, hey, it's time for a price reduction. If you just told them at the very beginning, hey, we need to discuss price reductions every 2 weeks. I will call you on a Friday if we have less than 15 showings in a week, or whatever the market statistics are for your area, for them to know, here are the metrics that we need to talk about price reductions, and here's why those metrics are important. Do they know when to expect to have phone calls from you with updates? So if you set aside every Monday is your update day, that you're calling your active contracts, your active listings, whatever that looks like for you. And even if you just call and say, hey, I've got no news for you this week, nothing that we haven't already talked about. I just want to call and check in, let you know that I'm still here. I'm still working for you, and see if you have any questions. It's redundant. However, they know to expect you. And then the last one is at Mega Camp. I can't remember what her name was, but she talked about the buyer contracts and the buyer agency agreements, and she called them loyalty agreements. I love the way that she talked about them, because she took a so standard contract that everyone should be using, and she gave it a whole new preparation and a whole new name. And she calls it the loyalty agreements, and she gives the expectations for loyalty, which means she expects loyalty from them and she will give loyalty back to them. So that's pretty much all the examples I have for you guys today. I am so thankful for everybody that's been on. I know we're about 10 minutes early on here. I figured that I'd open it up if anybody has any questions. And as we go through questions, I do have this slide up here. I am in the process of becoming master faculty for teaching. And I would greatly appreciate if you could give a review. It should take less than 2 minutes. Here's all the steps. I even put where I am in the drop down to make it easy for you guys. I have to have 300 reviews. So I would really greatly appreciate if you guys could help me with this. But as you guys are doing that, does anybody have any questions that you want to talk through? Nope, no questions. Okay, guys. Y'all were awesome. Thank you for the engagement that you gave me. I hope this was valuable to you guys today, and I hope you had fun talking about this. This is building passion, building conviction for people working with you. and just look at customer experience, remember that is you serving people, and experience is building that trust, and it's the life unexpected. What am I unexpectedly giving people? So I love you guys. I'm thankful that you guys are all part of the Keller Williams family. And if you guys ever need anything, just feel free to give me a call, and we will see you very soon. Thank you, everybody.